Hi, Lisa here from Cool Kids Hub. Today I want to talk about when and how to night wean your baby. Now, your baby's getting a little bit bigger and waking up less frequently for feeds, and you might be wondering if it's the right time to night wean, but you're not quite sure where to start. Now, it's natural as your baby grows, their tummies are able to hold more food, and therefore they start waking up less frequently for night feeds. And some babies actually wean themselves completely, where they just stop all on their own waking up. However, other babies sometimes need a little bit of a nudge in the right direction. So if you have a little one right now that you think is ready for night weaning, but you're not quite sure where to start, then in this video I'm going to share with you when is the right time to night wean, how to night wean, as well as share some tips with you. So first of all, when should you night wean? The short answer is between 4 and 6 months, because this is when they're developmentally ready to be able to hold more food and go for the entire night without requiring a feed. Now, you also need to look at a couple of other things. You would ideally like them to weigh between 5.5 and 6.5 kilograms. You want them to be feeding really well in the day and preferably even starting to take some solids during the day. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be taking solids, because there are babies that night wean without taking any solids. I know my son, he wasn't on solids when he started sleeping through the night without any feeding. But you would like them to be between that, like I said, 5.5 to 6.5 kilograms, 4 to 6 months, because then they're developmentally ready. And before you night wean, always just check with your pediatrician if your little one is ready to night wean. So the other consideration before night weaning is, can your baby fall asleep independently? Now, what do I mean by that? If your little one currently uses feeding to go back to sleep, then night weaning is going to be really challenging, because not only are you trying to night wean them, but you're also trying to teach your little one how to fall asleep independently. So I would suggest that before you even think of night weaning, you first help your little one to sleep independently. Now, I do have a couple of videos on this channel around how to get your baby to sleep through the night, and I will put the links to those in the description. Also, if you're thinking now maybe it might be the time to start sleep training your little one, I'll also put some links in the description to understanding the different sleep training methods, as well as a program that I use to sleep train my little one. But you want your baby to be able to fall asleep on their own. Like I said, otherwise they're going to be saying, well, where's my feed, because I can't go back to sleep. So if your little one can't fall asleep independently, in other words, you can't put them down awake and they just go to sleep on their own, you're still feeding them to sleep, then the first thing is address that. So what are some of the other signs to look for that your baby might be ready to night wean? Well, sign number 1 is that they're taking little milk during their feeds at night. Sign number 2 is that you sometimes actually having to wake them up to feed them. And like I said, sign number 3 is that they're eating really well during the day, including solids. If your baby is there, then these are some other signs that your baby is now ready to night wean. So now you've established that your baby is, you have really 2 options to go, whether it's cold turkey or whether you're going to do gradual night weaning. And really that decision is up to you. Now, if your baby is waking up several times still and you're considering night weaning, then my recommendation would be that you take a more gradual approach. It's going to be really hard to go to cold turkey if your baby is still waking up 2 or 3 times in the night to feed. So therefore, going gradual will make that transition a lot easier. Also, if you are breastfeeding still, so you're not bottle feeding, you're breastfeeding, a gradual transition may also make it a little bit easier on you in terms of just milk production. So just bear that in mind. But if your baby is only waking up once in the night, then you could go cold turkey is probably the best recommendation, because it's only one feed that you're actually having to deal with. So let's talk about, first of all, how you night wean a breastfed baby. So if you're going to go cold turkey because they're currently only waking up, then when your baby wakes for their feed, do not feed them. You just try other settling techniques to get them to go back to sleep. So it might be a bit of rocking or shushing, but you don't actually feed them if you're going to go cold turkey. You just resettle them using other techniques. If you're going to take a more gradual approach, then what you do is it will take a few nights. So you time how long your little one is feeding on each breast, and you gradually reduce that time every couple of nights. So let's say now that your little one's feeding 7 minutes on each breast, you might reduce that down to about 2 minutes to 5 minutes on each breast, leave it like that for a couple of nights, and then go down to 3 or 4 minutes. Once you get to the 2-minute mark, then stop feeding altogether. So what you're doing is you're gradually just decreasing the amount of feed that you're giving them in the night, little bit of increments over a period of time. So like I said, if you're at 7 or 8 minutes now, feeding time on each breast, reduce that by 2 minutes, wait a couple of nights, reduce it by another 2 minutes until you get to the 2-minute mark. When you get to the 2-minute mark, one of two things will happen. Either you then just cut out the sleep altogether, the feed altogether, and use other settling techniques to get your baby back to sleep, or you might find your little one doesn't even wake anymore by the time it gets to that amount of little food. So if you're bottle feeding your baby and you're going to go cold turkey, so the same thing, you won't, when they wait for their feed, you don't feed them, you just use other techniques to settle them. And if you're going to take a gradual approach, you do the same with breastfeeding, but you just reduce the mils or the ounces that you're giving them. So let's say that you're currently giving your baby 160 mils. Again, you'll reduce that, maybe take it down to 130 to 140 mils, wait a couple of nights, 110. When you get to around the 60 mil mark, then you stop. If your baby then wakes, you'll resettle them using other settling techniques, or but don't feed them at that time. So once you get to that 60 mils, you're just going to use other techniques to resettle them once they wake up. So for both of the breastfeeding and the bottle feeding, the process is the same. You reduce it a little bit, wait a couple of nights, reduce it until you get to 2 minutes for the breast, or 160 mils for the bottle, and then you stop. Now, what do you do if your baby still persists? Because some babies have persistent personalities and they're like, no, I still want my food. So like I said, once you get to that 2 minutes of the 160 mils, just stop. Now, you might find that some babies do stop independently, but if you do have a more persistent baby, first of all, there's a few things you could try. Tip number 1 is let your partner go in to resettle them. If you've been the one that's obviously feeding, obviously if you're breastfeeding, it's been you, but if you're bottle feeding and you've been predominantly the one who's getting up doing the feeds, let your partner go in and resettle. Often babies can, obviously you smell different to your partner, so let your partner go in and try and resettle them. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is just let them fuss a little bit before you go to them. Now, I'm not telling you to let them cry for hours on end. I'm just saying give them a few minutes, because they might wait, fuss a little bit, go, oh, you're not coming, and go back to sleep, because they're not actually hungry at this stage. By the time they're getting to 2 minutes or 160 mils, they really don't need the food. Or 60 mils, they really don't need the food. They're actually just waking out of habit. So if you give them a few minutes, you might find they actually resettle on their own. And then tip number 3 is stay consistent. If you have made the decision that you're now not getting up for feeds anymore, don't then, when your baby wakes, feed them and go, no, I just want you to go back to sleep, I'm going to feed you. Use your other techniques, your settling techniques, but just stay consistent. Now, the last thing I want to just cover is early morning feedings, because what can often happen is you've totally night weaned your baby, yet your baby still wakes up around that 5 a.m. for a feed. And this is a really tricky one, because if they're left, some babies will go back to sleep, whereas other babies think it's the beginning of the day and they are quite happy to get up and start their day at 5 a.m. So you're going to have to judge this one. But if your baby, so they're successfully night weaned, they're not waking up at all in the night, but they are still waking up for that 5 a.m. feed, this might be the one feed. If you don't want to start your day at 5 a.m., you might have to give in and feed them. And then they will give you a couple of hours sleep, and they'll probably, sleep another couple of hours till 7 or 7:30. So that is really how you night wean your little one. Remember that the most important thing, like every stage in your baby's development, is to stay consistent. once your baby sees that you're not going to feed them, they will start to just sleep through, because like I said, by the time they get to 2 minutes or 60 mils, they're waking more out of habit than anything else. So just let them fast, resettle them with other techniques, and just stay consistent. That's it for today. Bye for now.